Hello.
Welcome back.
I was like getting comfortable. Season 2. And, you know, we had our first episode of the season last week.
Yeah.
And you alluded to something about your health and a health scare. And I'm ready to dive into your stories for a change. Let's do it,
The
please.
pregnancy area has been birthed.
It's done. Thank you. So I'm opening it up. Like, I want you to talk about this, and it's kind of something that started for you at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So end of 2024.
Yeah. So I do my yearly GP work. I do my blood tests. I do all the female things that need to get checked, and do all that in about November, right before the end of the year, so that for me I can kind of like go into the new year like knowing things are good, health's on track, it's all like done and dusted, cleaned up in that year. However, this year was different. This year was a little bit different. So I have a history of having breast cancer in the family. So every year I have to get a mammogram done and an ultrasound. Now, ultrasound is not typical. For those of you who have family with history, have a history of breast cancer or a type of cancer in your family, you can push to get ultrasounds done here in Australia. So yeah, I got the referral, I set the appointment, and it was a blimey hot day.
Like heat.
Summer, yes, yeah. It was like about 30 degrees, and I decided I love getting my steps in. I'm on a challenge, 10,000 steps a day, so I decided to walk as much as I could, get a good distance in, and then catch some public transport into the city where I was getting my scan done. What was super interesting was I'd previously had a lump found back in 2019, and as I was walking to catch the public transport, I could hear that story playing back in my head. And what happened in that first time that I had all those scans done was that I actually fainted 3 times getting a mammogram, which is quite unheard of.
Yeah. It really got you good.
It did. It did. So I could hear myself replaying that story back and feeling the need to let the other person know who was going to be running the mammogram that this is what happened, and like kind of retelling the story. And it was like I wasn't in a good place. It was super hot. Like, it was the first time I was getting it done, and like I was rushed because they had changed locations, and I could hear the chaos of the story, but also like needing to. I was started to question myself, like, why do I need to fill this unknown, unsuspecting person in on all this detail? And it was that worry of, I don't want to faint again. Like, I don't want that to happen. It's kind of not in my control as much as, you know, I can control what I can control, but if my body's going to faint, it's going to faint.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could just hear myself telling that story, feeling like a bit of a drama queen, and that I was going to create this big scenario and this big story, which women typically do like to create stories.
We can create some great
and
stories.
Make lots of dramatic things happen. And I just clocked that I was doing that, and I started laughing at myself, being like, why do you need to create this story? Why do you need to inform this person, you know, going in? I'm turning up on time, I'm turning up ahead of time, I have a plan that, like, with the heat, like, of keeping hydrated, being there earlier so that I can sit in the air conditioning, and, you know, all those things. So I had done kind of the preparation work to put myself or set myself up to be in a good position. And when I got there, they were short-staffed, and the team was running a little bit late, so I had more time to sit there. And anyway, went into the room, and I noticed that the lady was carrying a bag of lollies. And it clocked in my mind that she might have some notes written on me that I had fainted last time. And so I said, oh, are those for me? And she said, I said, do you have notes on the file? And she said, yes, and I don't have time for you to faint today.
Snap.
And I was like, yeah. And again, I was just clocking, being really present in the moment. It was like, she's under pressure. Her words to some people could have come off like quite harsh, quite uncompassionate, but she was pushed to the limit. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to faint. That's not my plan. So I started taking my shoes off, and she said, oh no, you don't need to take your shoes off. And I said, no, that's what I need. I need to cool down, and I need to be grounded when I'm doing it. And that's best going to help me. So something I'd learnt from you and all the pregnancy stories that we went through last year was how you advocated for yourself. And so what I took away was just in that moment choosing to advocate and express, this is what I need in order to put myself in the best position to, you know, not faint, basically. And when I got into the machine, and I don't know, have you had your mammograms done? Never. Okay.
I think I'm actually afraid of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because you only hear bad stories.
Yeah. So the story that was playing in my head was my mum and her sisters sitting around the coffee table, having their afternoon tea cake with tea and coffee, and talking about how they had their mammograms, and it felt like the machine was squeezing them so hard that their nipple was going to fly off. And so this is what was in my mind.
Yes. Is it like that?
It's not as bad as that. Okay. No.
So they were being drama queens. Not realising what that did to you, to little ears listening.
Yeah. And, you know, talking about how it becomes a pancake, it gets squished so hard and whatnot. And I'm sure everybody has a story. Drop it into the DMs of our Instagram if you do. I'd love to hear what they named it for you. But, that story was definitely playing in my mind the first time, like, I'd had it done and had that kind of fainting. And I think that kind of, like, added to it. And because it became familiar, obviously, as a process now, I knew what to expect. It's not as bad or as dramatic as that. However, I said to her, because of the certain angles that you've got to get with the machines, I said, if I tilt my neck back this, like, too far this way, this is where it triggers, I feel like, the hot and cold flush that leads into the faint. So what was really beautiful, again, in advocating and just expressing that was the point at which I felt was my trigger to faint, she adjusted the way that she moved and took the scans and said, okay, like, even though part of the scan was still happening, she's like, okay, you can move your head now, you can relax this. So you actually, like, worked as a team and got in and out, like, real quick, without the drama.
No fainting, no
Correct.
drama.
No updated client notes.
She might not need lollies anymore, might be the new note in the system.
We can delete previous note, please. I mean, that was a whole thing. I was in a corridor with my feet up. There was someone checking my blood pressure. That was a whole scenario.
And that adds to the drama, doesn't it? Like, I think it adds to that story that you're telling yourself of, like, then I'm going to be out there in public and I'm going to have all these people around me. You know, it just intensifies it. Yeah.
And those people can at times come off compassionate and sometimes come off, like, it does give you the effect that it feels like an inconvenience, which it is. But yeah, I just clocked having that drama queen play out in your head is actually a really emotionally immature response. It's not a grounded response. It's not an emotionally mature response. What was being able to clock it in the moment and then advocate for my needs and express them, even in the face of her saying, for example, you don't need to take your shoes off, and me saying, no, this is what I need, and doing that anyway to set myself up so that it end up being a successful experience in that moment. Yeah.
Because would you say that, you know, and this might not be the case all the time, but sometimes, like, that drama queen comes out based on an underlying fear, and it is, like, essentially the purpose of it is maybe trying to get you to that point of advocating for yourself or setting boundaries or speaking your truth or whatever that might be, given the different scenarios. But is it fear-based?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of the drama queen archetype that is fear-based and fear-driven, and I think in a scenario like that, it definitely can be. Yeah. And I definitely think it was present for me. And that's exactly also what that moment is teaching you, is like, how are you choosing to respond? Are you choosing to stay in that reaction and that story and the chaos and the drama and all the emotions and the roller coaster of it, and involving all these other parties and players into this story? Yeah. For what purpose? Yeah. Because it's not actually solving the fear. It's not dissolving it at all. It's not healing it. Like, you're actually putting, what is it, more gasoline on the fire, in a sense. Like, you're making it bigger than what it needs to be. Yes. And so to carry through that, straight after that, I have an ultrasound, and in the ultrasound they did find a lump, and they did tell me in the moment, which they didn't previously do. Right. A couple years ago, when I had that lump, that first initial lump discovered, it was all very kind of hush-hush and told through your GP, like where you had to go back. And so the fact that the person doing that said, there is a lump, you'll need to have a biopsy, you'll need to go back to your GP and get like the referral, etc. So again, I was so proud of myself for clocking the drama queen on my way there and in that whole scenario, but I can feel her coming up again, because yes, fear-based. Yeah. It's like, okay, what if? Yeah. What if this does turn out to be the thing that I don't want it to be? And I had that moment, and I probably had, where I was in the room by myself, probably had a good 3 to 5 minutes of breathing through that, because it's the only repetitive thought that was kind of coming through. And then I made a decision to say, this is not my story. Yeah. This is not a story I'm choosing to continue on in my family line. And I'm healthy. And when I walked out of the clinic that I was in, again, just being very super present of this drama queen part, wanting to come out and play through all these stages, I didn't actually get on the phone and be like, oh my gosh, to my friend, they found a lump. I did meet with a friend for lunch, and I just had a very long conversation for about an hour before raising something, but then I set the expectation of, this is how I want to speak about it. Yeah. This is how I don't want to speak about it. And this is how I'm viewing it. And basically it's a non-discussion until there's an actual result that says yes or no. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to spend the next week, because it's going to take time to get results. I don't want to spend the next week creating or continuing that energy of the what if, of the drama, of the worst case scenario, because that, I don't believe personally that that's healthy. I don't believe that's energy to have in your system.
And would you agree that other people can bring their own drama of it to your situation, and then that can obviously make it so much harder for you to stay aware and stay grounded and stay conscious and stay out of the drama.
Yeah, so if they've had an experience where they have a family member or they've been affected by, say for example, cancer in their life, they can project their experience onto you, or their unresolved, parts of their process that they haven't processed through their own experience, and try and recreate that within that dynamic, with me. So there's that aspect, but then there's also the aspect of, and I can hear some questions around, but that's being sympathetic and being empathetic. Yes, but you've got to meet the person where they want to be met, not where you want to meet them. Yeah. In going through the experience. Yes. Yes. And this is where raising that level of consciousness to ask for what you need and communicate that clearly. Yes. rather than playing out these undercurrents of, I'm going to create this whole drama and story, and I'm going to therefore manipulate this undercurrent of, I'm fearful, so therefore you're going to give me attention, you're going to check in, and I'm going to keep playing into this story that doesn't actually exist.
And you did this with me. Like, I have proof of this.
Yeah.
Because when you decided to tell me, and it was over text, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And
we were meant to meet up for filming the podcast.
And I had family stuff. And you had just obviously received this information and were in the waiting phase for the results. And you texted me and you asked for exactly what you needed. You said, I'm not going to make this my story. This is not my story. I'm not carrying on this family, history into my current existence. And in much more eloquent terms than I just put it.
Well, just that it, there's a belief for me that it ends with me.
Yes.
I'm here to heal that part from an emotional perspective, but also from a physical perspective, from a health perspective, with the knowledge and resources and information that I have access to and that I continue to have access to as the world evolves. How can I know better and then do better so this doesn't get passed on generationally?
And I will say, receiving that, it makes it easier as the responder. Because I'm sure, I've definitely done this, and I'm sure loads of people have, where you get a text message and you read it and you go, oh, how do I respond to this? And I know there are people out here now who put it into ChatGPT and get a response and then copy paste that in, right?
Wow, I didn't know that existed.
Yes. Yeah, I'm surrounded by a few in the generation who have grown up with tech, and they know what they're doing. They use it for a lot. But I think having someone like yourself dictate what you needed, it just takes away that guessing of, will I say the wrong thing? And look, I have a career in trying to say the right thing all the time.
We both do.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I'm adept at it, but it still helped me in that moment.
Yeah. Because I think everyone chooses to approach the experience or their life experience, whatever they're going through, in their own way. And I think that's the part where we need to actually take responsibility for, how do I want to approach this? We need to actually consciously think, how do I want to approach this? How do I want to engage it? Yes, there's definitely parts of me that were the attention that I want is that I want a hug. The attention that I want, and those aspects aren't bad. Yeah. But it's, instead of manipulating to get there and doing it in unhealthy ways that are disguised through sympathy and empathy and just, this is me, just this is what's happening in my life and I'm just living my story and this is the truth. It's yes, but that can also be repelling, or your identity through being perceived by other people can start to be known as, there's always a drama, there's always a story. And it can actually make people want to avoid you.
Of course,
you know? Whereas if you can meet it from a healthy perspective and still ask for those attention needs met. I remember going to my local Pilates studio and I said to one of the girls that I was friends with there, I'm like, I just need a hug. And she gave me what I needed. And it wasn't a question, and I felt good within that moment, and it didn't come from an unhealthy space. There wasn't, a heavy undercurrent or energetic exchange around that, so it was good. And I chose also not to tell people in that space and time between knowing that I had this lump and not knowing, when I had the, what did I just call it? The biopsy. When I had the biopsy, and then even in getting the results still took time. Yeah. So still sitting with that unknown and that uncertainty. And I think that's also a great expander for you if you want to do personal development work, if you want to become more emotionally intelligent and more emotionally regulated, more emotionally resilient. You want to be able to attract somebody in your life who's safe and secure. You need to be that for yourself. And it's how you show up in these micro moments that build that identity and that part of you. And like attracts like. Oh, snap.
You know, I feel like I just gave one of my evil laughs because that landed and I was like, doesn't it? Yeah. I was also thinking of a smutty book that I read that says that all through it.
Right. So, you know, it's, again, the evolution. How am I choosing to respond versus react in this moment? Because this is going to become my future self.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, taking that time out, and then there was literally 3 people that knew. Yourself, because of the podcast, a friend who I had already organized to meet up with for lunch on that particular day, unbeknown to, you know, being told that I, you know, had this mass in my breast. And then one of my best friends knew. And so then when I got the results that I got the all clear, which was a relief, and again, something that I held on to was every day, whenever that thought or whenever I felt that undercurrent of fear come up, because that is also natural. I'm not denying or suppressing any part of that. It's also choosing, again, the response. And if it were a positive result, if it were a yes, you have cancer, then this is how I'm going to reevaluate and then respond to it then. But I wasn't going to make plans until I actually had a clear result.
Yeah. And that would have kept you out of, you know, the future thinking, anxiety, thought processes of, if this happens, what do I do? And then if this happens, oh my goodness, what's going to mean for this, and this? You know, it would have kept you in a bit of a different headspace to where it really could have gone.
But also, what a waste of time.
And energy.
How unproductive to, again, create the story, fantasize that's happened. You actually, that's what you're calling in. Like attracts like. What do you want to call in?
Yeah.
You know, and until it happens where you get that result, only then can you decide your path forward with that information. But until then, you're also choosing and deciding your path forward in the micro time frame that you have.
Yeah.
So stop dramaing. Stop dramatizing. You know, that poor lady, if I had have gone in there with the big drama on top of her day where she was obviously feeling under pressure already, it would have just been energetically and emotionally dumping on her to some stranger who then could potentially be going home to somebody who is ill or, you know, who does have something else going on. Like, and I feel like that's unfair to do that. You know, there's an expectation that we can't assume that just because someone's a healthcare provider that we expect that they should have to hear that dramatized story, you know, as well.
I don't know why, but my brain just jumped to like the hairdresser chair. Because I feel like so many people, and me previously included, they go and they sit in that chair and it's an emotional dump. You know, and I've spoken to my hairdresser about this actually, like just how much they can take home with them every day. And it really highlights the importance of being intentional. And you've, I guess something I've noticed you do in everything you do is you are intentional. And is that something you developed or something that, you know, you've always innately had in there somewhere?
I think that it's something that I consciously have to work on continuously. I don't think it's necessarily embodied and fully ingrained, because it's moments like this where it's like, okay, how do I have to ask myself, how do I want to go in there? How do I want to spend my time? How do I want to use my time? If I'm going to this place, and again, I think it also comes from having big dreams and big goals and big aspirations. And now being in the point of life where I've shed so many layers, it is about intentionality of okay, we're spending this time together, we're here filming, what are we filming? Like, we're being productive and maximizing this time, but also like, what do we want to get out of it from a connection perspective? What are things that I want to share with you? What are things that I want to make sure that I ask and check in with you and be really present to continue our relationship? Because I'm going to have space when I get in the car and drive home, you know, then I've got decompression space. Yeah. But I think being aware of people's, if you say you respect someone's time, do you? Do you? How do you show up? Do you take for granted their time and just do whatever you want, not considering what they may have going on in and outside of life? And I think that can easily happen in friendships, and maybe that's where you see more of the intentionality.
Yeah, and even just your health pursuits in general, which I suppose ties into the, you know, having that intention to do those checks every year, like what you described at the start of this episode. Like, even just to do that so intentionally.
I guess for me, with having lost my mum to cancer, that's a defining moment that shifts your life's perspective. And again, there's two choices: bury your head in the sand, or dive in and choose to know more about it and know how it could impact you. And I think that's the space that I went to. Was you can either head in the sand or grow through it, learn through it, make decisions around it. And those decisions, I think, have evolved year on year. The more that I come to know, more information gives you more exposure to ask different questions and think about different things, and to choose what parts you want to take into your life and integrate and pursue on that health journey, for me anyway. Because it's changed. Year on year it's changed.
The evolution.
The 1%ers.
Yes.
The 1%ers.
Yes. And if you don't know what they are, definitely listen into earlier episodes. We talk about them.
1% every day, 365 days, 365% growth, baby. That's all we're here for.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that personal share. And hallelujah to being clear.
And that's the journey to continue,
isn't it? Because it is not your story.
It's not my story.
To the drama queens out there, thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing.
What a great way to end. Calling you out on your bullshit, people.
I am.
We all
sometimes.
have it. Don't play into it. It's emotionally immature, and if you like I said, like attracts like. So if you want to attract, or you wonder why you're not attracting certain things into your life, whether it's career, jobs, relationships, money, look at where your inner drama queen is playing out and running the show. Thank you for listening or watching, viewing, and subscribing. We'll see you again next week.
See you next week.
Bye.